Okay. Hi. Long time no see. Many of you already know. Anyway, no. I'm gonna I'm gonna say that some of you might know. Anybody who ever takes the time to listen to me or watch me in any of the platforms that I've been reaching out on for the last, I don't know. Looks like it's coming up to 8 years, maybe. And my memory's a little sketchy these days. Those who began watching me on YouTube, my Margie C channel that I I don't know, it was converted at some point to Chatty Great Granny over the course of the time that I was using it for my daily journals or my journal updates or whatever you might want to call them. It was a project, basically, that's coming to an end. Well, hopefully coming to an end before I'm done being able to work at all in this world that we're currently trying to endure, most of us. The title of this particular video needs to be something like, a picture says 1,000 words, because there's a baby lotion bottle behind me, a box of tissues, some zinc cream, and a ticking clock, but also a Jesus with children picture that comforts me in many ways. There's a reason for everything that I've included in all of my videos, sometimes known only to me, and it's important that I start explaining why I started this journey of public humiliation in many ways over the last long time. I'm in a better headspace, but the purpose of everything that I've filmed thus far and exposed was to teach me about me. I had a belief that nobody would be interested. I'm still not sure that anybody's interested in what I have to say. But I believe that somebody must be listening. Either that or I'm not off the mark at all. Because the crap that I've been trying to warn people about is pretty much here right now. And if the Strait of Hormuz doesn't get reopened pretty soon by Great Britain, the King of England place, remember how the United States had no kings? Most recently, currently, I've come to find out by my channel that I watch and I like to watch, called the Elevate Report. This wonderful guy, can't quite put my finger on his name right now, but today's report is well worth watching. Anybody who wants to watch it should. March 23rd, Monday. This guy is a podcaster. In Canada, you see, we don't have a real access to freedom of anything. And my concern is that Americans aren't getting the message about what they have to look forward to if they don't present themselves for the midterm elections and keep Trump in office. I know this is crazy and it's politics, and oh my God, I'm not supposed to be talking politics. But it's important. As a Canadian citizen, I can tell you, I can attest to the fact that if you don't keep Trump in place, you are going to fall and suffer the consequences of whoever else gets installed. Because if he can't do what he needs to do, you guys are all, effed completely. Now, you must watch my friend from the Elevate Report because he's awake and he's desperately trying to get information to the public of Canada because we're so stupid. We're so indoctrinated and brainwashed that we allowed for that clown, Carney, to become our king, master, slave driver, because that's what he is. He's not a prime minister. Prime ministers are supposedly elected. Well, he's a prime minister the same way that that Stammer guy in Britain is. No, he's a puppet. He's a prime minister the same way little baby Justin Trudeau was. I like to call him baby PM. I used to like to call him baby PMT because he's a baby, really. I mean, his narcissism will never allow him to grow up. He's good with this person named that he's with now, I suspect, because I had, didn't she go up in the air thinking that she was transformed in one of Mr. Bezos's rockets that got them to high enough altitude where they became weightless? Oh my God! Oh, she's an astronaut! You know. And Elon Musk, I'm going to shout out to you right now because I think it's important you know that you gave hope to this old girl. And I know that you got punished. You got spanked bad by the world. This horrible world that, the elitists and the globalists and the kings and queens that are coming back to North America to claim their property back. It's true. It's true. It doesn't, you might not believe it. But, Canada is so brainwashed and stupid. The population actually had tried to have a no kings rally. Now, we had the King of friggin' England, King Charles. God bless you, sweetie. Environmentalism, brainwashing, and psychosis. Don't do that. You were born a Christian man, please. Don't allow these morons to let you think you're doing the right thing by enslaving the world again and try to become king of the world again. If that's your motivation, because I don't believe that is. I think you're a good person. I think you're just a little misguided. Maybe it's your wife. I don't know. Maybe it's your wife. But I have a lot of hope in Prince William. Harry, my husband met Harry. He's a poor little guy. I don't mean little in a little sense, but I hope, and I'm praying for him because he got trapped by a witch. I'm just saying, she's not a very nice person. Anybody that tries to monetize their children is really not very good. That's just my opinion. There is no such, you don't do anything for brand. I mean, she wants to be brand. What is it? Brand princess? Well, you're not a princess anymore. And you manipulated that poor Harry. You manipulated him, and that's wrong. You tried to use your children. That's wrong. It doesn't matter how they became your children. They're your children, right? They're babies. They need a mommy and a daddy. They don't need a queen and king, prince or princess. They need a mommy and a daddy. That will protect them from the bad world that's been created largely due to previous generations of daddy's family. And people like you, Megan, just so you know. Celebrity, artists, actors, and actresses, that's all they are, is actors and actresses. They don't actually do anything but entertain. Get back to the roots of what you are. Try to entertain people instead of make money off of a brand. You're not. There's nothing in you that's worth anything if you cannot be a good person to. If your children don't want to be with you because you're not really a mommy, people don't want to buy your products. They can make your products in their kitchen. Certainly don't want to pay overpriced for them because what? You think you can charge more because you manipulated poor Harry into marrying you? That's my thinking, my belief, my opinion. I don't care if you don't like it or not. So far as I know, the channels, the YouTube channel, Chatty Great Granny, and Chatty Great Granny 62 for Canadian viewers, I'm thinking, it's going to make it on to YouTube because I think YouTube might be able to make something off of this. I don't know, my content going forward may be valuable to somebody. Most of all, it's going to be good advice from an old girl who's lived a very, very hard life, but saw what was coming. And the Elevate podcaster who's reporting on it's called the Elevate Report on YouTube. I think his name's Josh. He's a wonderful little face. But I've been promoting in different channels on my stations for a long time. And my hope is that I'm contributing to their success because it's not about me. Nothing I do is about me. It's about, well, if you look at my picture and everything that's in, time matters to me. That diaper rash cream that you see over one of my shoulders, that's for my newest grandchild. He's a little boy and he's beautiful. In Canada, it's very difficult to raise kids outside of government control. That's a true story. I've seen the deterioration of the right to be a parent, the right to have children in Canada. There's a reason for all of the things that have happened in Canada during my lifetime and before I even was born. And there's a reason why that the Canadian brainwashed population that go to a voting booth for show elected that idiot. And part of the reason was, I don't know if you guys realize it in the United States, but when he was doing a debate to become the leader of the Liberal Party after baby PMT paved the way. But remember now, Mark Carney was running and controlling Justin Trudeau on behalf of China many years before he came to the fore. So when you see Prime Minister Carney, what you see is a representative of China. And he's doing their bidding, and he's making sure the deal gets closed. That's why all of our resources are still in the ground and nobody's allowed to make anything. And I just recently watched Joe Rogan's podcast where he interviewed Pierre Poilievre. Now, he wasn't my first choice for leader of the party. And I know why he got reelected as leader of the party. But he is not going to be right for the leader of the party if he doesn't abolish the murder of Canadian citizens through MAID. If he doesn't put a stop to that immediately, or at least call attention to that, because he poo-pooed that shit on during Joe Rogan's interview. Poo-pooed it like it was nothing. Oh, well, everybody has a right to their choice. You don't have much rights if you're dead or if you're sick and you can't speak for yourself. And I've personally been involved in trying to save my own life right now, but trying to save the lives of my parents. COVID. COVID, remember that? Do you think it was about a pandemic? No. It was about a world health order. There are certain people that don't deserve to live in Canada, especially if they're born here or immigrated here prior to 2017. That's my opinion, based on my experience. And I was heavily involved in refugee work up until something happened and I had to give it up. But something always happens when you're trying to do the right thing, right? When you're trying to do the right thing, the whole world will come against you, especially if it goes against the agenda of people with deep pockets and power and control, who were until President Trump got elected in 2016. There's a reason that shocked the shit out of everybody. But there was also a reason why he was elected. I knew it. I knew it then. The American population started to wake up to it during the Biden administration when, their neighborhoods were transformed completely. They're no longer really free to walk the streets. In some communities that are, let's say, overpopulated perhaps with Somalis or Afghanis that came in to change your world. Really? Come on. Minnesota, come on. The reason why there's been such a force in Minnesota and Washington State, California, God, the people of California are outnumbered by the illegals. The people of Washington State that were born and raised there are outnumbered by the invaders that came in during Biden years of open immigration. Invaders. They're not refugees. The illegal invaders of your country will take over yours like they did Canada. Now that Carney's got a majority government, we're stuck with him for the next 4 years. Canadian born and people who immigrated prior to 2017, when that Mark Miller opened the border to anybody, any Tom, Dick, and Harry that wanted to come to take control of the population, so they can kill them, they can rape them, they can murder them, just like they do in Great Britain right now. Rape gangs and stuff. That's here in Canada now. The only reason it's not as bad is because Trudeau didn't have a majority government, and Trump was in power. Well, Carney's got a majority government, and during the lead up to his election as leader of the Liberal Party, both he and Christine Freeland, my God, I hope you're safe wherever you end up. I know you're doing the work of Carney in the Ukraine now, but well, actually, I don't care if you're safe. You don't care about Canadians. You certainly did your best to make sure that the Canadian that were unworthy were stripped of their rights as just and second-hand women, right? You've destroyed Canada. You're in a war zone now. I don't think there's much there you can destroy, but I know that you're there to make money for Brookfield and the likes, the World Health Organization, and what's that other organization? we're, no, not World Health, the WEF people, friends. But they're all the royals that used to run the world up until 200-300 years ago, when Canada and the United States became modernized and societies. Now, Canada was stupid. They figured being a British subject to Britain was not so bad. And we didn't protect ourselves the way the United States did, because they really did have to fight a war in order to get independence from Britain. And that's probably the only reason why they still have some freedom. You won't if you don't get to your midterm elections and vote Trump. Not the rhinos. I hope Trump grow a pair and force all of the rhinos. That's the Republican in name only, for those people who don't know what that is. Force them to go up for re-election. I don't know if it's too late or not. I don't know much about the nuts and bolts of American politics, frankly. I know even less about Canadian politics because it's changing. It doesn't really matter in Canada. There's nothing democratic about Canada anymore. See, the problem that we have in Canada is Poilievre was part of the Harper administration. And everybody knows that everybody in Harper administration were the same as everybody in the Liberal administration. Bought and paid for. Ready to do as, people who are willing to pay the price will tell them. Or they got backbenched, right? I mean, that's how it works in the parliamentary system. That's why Britain has fallen apart right now. And the people are fighting in the streets. It's chaos. France and Germany, well, they've always been a little bit of a problem when it came to real democracy and freedom. They never really understood how to do that. Americans showed us the way. Unfortunately, they became an independent country of their own, well, over 100 years before we did. But we never really did. And then Justin Trudeau's daddy, Pierre, when he signed his documents with Queen of England back in 1982, it was basically a deal to sell out the people that created the country of Canada. The Indigenous population of Canada is me. My grandmother, on my mother's side, full-on Canadian Mi'kmaq Indian. But you know what? She was born in Newfoundland, like my mother, before 1952. So there was no such thing as Indigenous and trade, tribal Indigenous rights. They blended. Britain wasn't interested in what Newfoundland had to offer, but it was nice to have. And then once the deal was solidified, the first deal anyway, or they figured they were relatively safe, guess what? They were welcomed into Canada, because Canada was still part of the Commonwealth and owned by Britain. The Commonwealth, right? Now, 95% of the Canadian population, and I believe it's that high in Australia and New Zealand, those other countries that were formed as part of the British Commonwealth, to think that they were free. They're not free. In Canada, we start, lately anyway, we start every political meeting with, we are unceded territory of so and so and so and so. They do it in Australia too. There's a reason for that. Because the kings and queens own the property, not the people. Doesn't matter that you paid for it. Doesn't matter that you've got a mortgage on it. You don't own it. At any rate, and at any point, the, the indigenous minions that are bought and paid for will, will be able to come and claim that property as their own. And if you want to grow your own food or hunt for your own food or fish for your own food, you're not going to be allowed to do that. Why do you think farmers have been under so much attack? Food supply, right? Why do you think everybody wants digital currency? Governments can control digital currency just like they control everything else in a digital world. They're even controlling the online footprints of people. They're using AI now. People will not be able to distinguish between what's real and what's not now, even online. The only thing that you can really count on is anything that's been printed in America, frankly, because I don't think if it's nonfiction, they had laws that prevented it from being a lie. But remember, the very first thing that was ever printed on a printing press was the Gutenberg Bible, which was a lie because it removed a whole bunch of books because King Henry changed the Bible, remember? When he decided he didn't want to keep having to beg Rome for the right to dismiss his new wife. I mean, this is my version of history. But, you know, I defy anybody to prove that I'm wrong. Prove it. It's ancient history, right? And they're very much in the process of changing history. But guess what I found? A book. Do you know what it is? It was printed in 1898. Do you know when 1898 was? It was only 11 years after Canada become, I think it's 11 years. Wait a minute, let me do my math. I'm sick, so I don't know. 11 years after Canada became its own country, right? And in that very ancient book that's falling apart, it's currently in a friend's hands right now because I needed to show him that there was this book and that Canada became a country based on Jesuit Catholic Christian principles. Carney forgot that. Or he doesn't know that. He's really stupid. He's just got a very big ego. But yeah, no, Canada's a Christian country. And our founding laws were designed to protect Christians, especially Catholics. Catholics, because we were the ones who came. And the Jesuits were here, making inroads for the kings and queens and their elite organizations that came to clean up and decide who had rights and what rights were here. But those of us who come from families that date back to the 1600s, we know the truth. We know it because some of us lived it and we're curious about how our country was formed. We're curious about why as a Catholic, we have a separate school system. But we weren't, up until Brian Mulroney wanted to get his hands on the Catholic school system money, right? And decided, let's put all the money in one pocket. Or maybe it wasn't Bill Mulroney, maybe it was the provincial prime ministers or ministers that did it. I don't know which ones it was, but I was alive. I had children in school at the time. I knew that by doing that, and now their excuse was, well, it's not fair for high school age kids to have to pay for their Catholic education, so we'll provide it for free. All the Catholic education system had to do was give access, pool the diverted tax money that directly went to the Catholic school system on the say-so of the Catholic taxpayer. Because on our forms back then, we were allowed to determine where our taxes went. We paid for health care. We paid for health care provincially based on our income. And at the end of the tax year, we would get a portion of that money back that we paid out, depending on how much we earned. So basically, back then, the reason why Canada's healthcare was so successful was because it was a cooperative between the tax-paying person and the provincial government. Well, that got changed too under universal healthcare. Now, that happened under Mulroney, I know for sure. Well, now Canadian-born Catholics don't get, Canadian-born people don't get real health care anymore. They get mead because we're not supposed to exist. The Indigenous people that have been manipulated into believing that the church is wrong and went and burned down all those churches, 90-something of them, because they made the mistake of believing that there were actual bodies buried under that reservation in Kamloops. I lived in Kamloops. They've never found not even one human bone. You know why? Because it's only sonar that showed that there might have been bones under there. Could have been roots, too, of trees. But that little story that was, circulating amongst Trudeau was apparently a 2-for-1, because they were able to blame the church, the Catholic Church, which is protected under Canadian law, or used to be, and um, government overreach, and inflame a bunch of Native Canadians who've never had a clue what the natives of Canada endured, really, because they weren't there. They're just being told, and they're relying on, I don't know, not their ancestors, because their ancestors who know and aren't paid by the government are gone. Gone. Like my grandmother's dead. Dead. She would have had rights, but she was born in Newfoundland. My mother would have had rights, but she was born in Newfoundland before 1952, you see. Catholics had nothing to do with that, but we lost 97 churches. Catholics didn't kill anybody. They did some mistakes, but more importantly, the government residential schools were worse. Trust me. But Justin Trudeau didn't let you know that. And I challenge somebody. Please dig up a bone, dig up a body. In Kingston, Ontario, they found that where John MacDonald, our founding Prime Minister of Canada, our first Prime Minister of Canada, is buried in a graveyard where they say it was once upon a time an Indian burial ground, which makes sense to me because Canadian government and the Indigenous communities would share a burial ground when he died, right? So what did they do while I was living in Kingston? They closed off the entire graveyard for excavation to honor the horrible, horrible Canadian government people who buried their dead with theirs as if they belonged. Well, we did belong. We didn't kill our Indigenous people. They killed us. The part of my family that came from Britain, Ireland, Scotland to escape British rule. There was a lot. They were probably the first immigrants to Canada. French. to escape Napoleon and what he was doing. But Canada was unique because it was the only place in the world where a Catholic was going to be allowed to freely express and live out their faith and prosper if they wanted to get a job. Even in the United States, Catholics were discriminated against. You know, the 3K clan, those people, they hated a lot of people. They hated Jews, they hated black people, they hated Indians or Native Americans, and they also hated, what did they call them? Papists. We weren't Christians, according to them. And there's still people there today that believe the Catholics aren't Christian, even though Christianity wouldn't exist, because Catholic is 2,000 years old, created by Jesus. If you believe in Jesus, then you have to believe that the Catholic Church is part of your heritage. If you go back enough generations, it's Henry and Luther and Calvin that split somewhere along the way by legitimate disputes, I'm sure. Well, not so much in Henry's case. I mean, come on. I guess it did get messy around his palace when he had to keep lopping off the heads of his latest bride. But whatever. Anyway, I digressed there. It's a big story. I hope you took the time to listen to it. If you didn't, that's okay by me. I'm doing this more for me than you anyway, if you're watching. The point is, the Gutenberg Bible was a lie. First thing ever printed for the mass populations. Anything in print that was available to the population in the 1500s, guess what? Cost more than most people earned in 2 or 3 years. Plus, most people couldn't read, so it didn't matter. But on the off chance that somebody would read it that had some brains to them, they don't want them knowing about real history. They want to remember history is written by the ones who win the wars. If anybody thinks that World War II ended in World War II, they were wrong. If anybody thinks that the Revolutionary War in the United States was ended when, the Americans won the ground war there, they were wrong. The war just went underground. And what's happening right now as you speak is above ground. And the Strait of Hormuz feeds a lot more people, or is responsible for a lot of people all over this globe, thanks to people like Britain, the European Union, and I don't know, whatever Middle Eastern governing bodies, kings and queens and elitists there are in cahoots to control oil reserves all over the world. And that's fine. Oil isn't the end game for most people. It shouldn't be. Elon Musk knew that. But Canada also knew that it was nuclear energy, hydroelectric powers, environmentally safe, if properly done. No, and provides electricity, but not these wind turbines that are polluting their land and deteriorating, providing zero to none. Well, what is it, less than 1% of our electrical needs? In Canada, how ridiculous it is to think that solar power, more money spent keeping the solar panels clear of, snow and debris than the electricity that they can provide, because we live in a very dark hemisphere. It's darker then lighter most of the year. Our longest day is somewhere around June, and our shortest day is somewhere around in December. But for most of that time, ladies and gentlemen, there is no sun shining. So those electrical panels that are attached to people's houses, they may produce power, but not very much. Not for Canadians, anyway. But Carney, who's, knee-deep in investment into Westinghouse, I think it is the latest purchase. He's decided to make, what is it? Little miniature nuclear stations, and what else? What else? Heat pumps that provide zero to no heat. Everybody in Ontario and everybody who's ever signed up for the freebie or incentivized programs to put in a heat pump found out this last winter how good those are in a really cold climate. Carney is a minion, but Carney was stupid enough to say we no longer have ties with the United States during his, basically something to that effect. My memory's a little off, so I could be wrong about my actual quotes, but I ask you, if you know French, watch the debate for the leadership of the Liberal Party that he took part in. Read his book. You will get an understanding of really what Carney is and who he is. And now you might be able to understand when I say he declared war on the United States, I have maybe a legitimate reason to believe that's what he did. And he kept poking that bear right up until his performance in Davos this last January, was it? When he was talking about a new world order. Now, he's making his deals with China. But remember, he went to China before he became prime minister, before he ran for election. I think even before he ran for leadership of the party, to make the deal. I believe it was to make the deal. I know that China doesn't just willy-nilly lend out the kinds of millions that he's got stashed in the United States for whatever reason. But they loaned him a lot of money. They're about to come and collect. And he's following through with the deals he made because he's there. It's out of the box now. They've got their police stations. They harass the expatriates of China in Canada without any obstruction whatsoever. I mean, one of the people that ran for election, this most recent election, had to quit because he offered up the guy who crossed the. Listen to this. If you don't believe me, it's a fabulous story. He crossed the floor. This same guy who had his life threatened by the liberal guy that had to resign because he was advising people how to collect him, kidnap him, and deliver him to the Chinese police force that would for a bounty on his head. That's true. That happened. It's part of our recent history. It was all over the news. The guy ended up resigning from having to being forced to resign. Wasn't able to run for re-election. But the guy whose life was apparently in peril got elected in Markham, and he crossed the floor. And is now a liberal. But he was running for the Conservative Party at the time. That's how Carney got his, partly how Carney got his majority. And he just bought an NDP. Now, they won't say that, I'm not allowed to say that because it's probably not true, right? It's just my opinion, but it certainly looks that way. I know that they were working hard to try to recruit members of opposition parties. Now, the the guy who's in charge of the, what is it, the Bloc Québécois party, if it comes to it and they need your votes, I recommend you vote against everything and with the Conservatives. Because if we don't do that, over the next 4 years, we're not going to be Canada anymore. We're going to be China West. China West. Because why does Trump give a shit about what we're doing? We're so stupid. We have an idiot prime minister who pulled American products off the shelves. Forced American products off the shelves because of this tariff nonsense. Here in Ontario. Remember Dougie? The guy who threatened to cut off electricity? The guy who paid with Carney's approval for advertising during some kind of sporting event that happened in the United States to try to sway the population of the United States. I mean, these people are monsters. If you don't think that what Carney has done is tantamount to declaring war and who he's really aligned with in war, and ministers, provincial ministers that are in cahoots with him, then there's a problem. I mean, Greenland, the people of Greenland have the right to decide, not Denmark. Come on. Canada gave up their right to have say-so in that conversation about Greenland, right? During, I think it was Harper? Harper is a minion too, in my opinion. We had no real choices. There was no difference between Conservative and Liberal and NDP and Bloc Québécois up until this most recent election when the newbies came on. I don't trust Pierre Poilievre, not especially after watching him on the Joe Rogan Experience. If there's any Canadians watching who give a shit, watch him. Watch how he deals with the shit that's happening to the Canadian-born population. Watch how he answered the question about the open border situation we have in Little India. Because the people who needed asylum in Canada from India couldn't afford a plane ticket here before 2017. The ones that could afford the plane ticket here after 2017 probably are not real. I'm speculating as somebody who knows something about immigration because I helped people immigrate to Canada under the refugee system that was set up prior to 2017. Right? I've got a family and some refugees from Sudan by way of Ghana to answer to because they came here thinking they were going to have a better life back then. No. Anybody who immigrated here before 2017 are in the same boat as a Canadian-born person. We're all slated for mead in our healthcare system. All of us. They just killed a poor guy because he had seasonal depressive disorder. I ask you, how many Canadians, and even new Canadians, don't suffer from seasonal depressive disorder in Canada? I mean, come on. Why is that worthy of the injection that killed him? And the lady who had her heart condition who was forced to take maid, even though she didn't want to die because her husband was tired of looking after her. God bless him. I hope somebody should pray for him, because I don't want to believe he knew what he was doing. But I'm in that boat. Every one of us are in that boat. That's why I don't have a power of attorney over my life. And I'm pretty sick right now. But I'm hoping that call that I got from my oncology office isn't calling to tell me that there's a recurrence of my cancer. Because if it is, then I'm going to lose that other breast for sure. But I almost bled to death when they operated to remove the first one. And my husband sat next to me, torturing me through the procedure for being the bitch that I am, for talking disrespectfully to the PSW that thought she was a nurse, who allowed for me to be bleeding all night long. I had to go back in to have the blood cleaned out, but fortunately, my actions caused the bleeding to stop. Her actions would have had me dead by morning. Because she doesn't know what she's doing, not because she did it on purpose. Because she's not a nurse. Most of the nurses that you see in a hospital these days are not real nurses. They were all replaced during COVID. You know that? None of those people were rehired. Not if they were coming from Canada. The only registered nurses that were rehired in Canada were hired in Canada after that. I suspect. I could be wrong. But most of them came from other countries or were indoctrinated to believe it's okay to kill people or neglect people or to mistreat people. And that's the state of affairs in our free and universal healthcare system as we speak. As I speak right now, I'm first-hand witness to it. First-hand witness to it on more than one occasion. And my witness dates back long before Justin Trudeau made it legal to kill people. You see, that's the first thing he did when he became Prime Minister of Canada. Made it legal to kill people in Canada who were sick. Fine. Now we're exporting a lot of organs. And we're killing people who have seasonal depressive disorder under that program. And women with a heart condition who don't really want to die, just want to have support. And their husband, probably is better off without her living because he's stressed. It's hard looking after somebody who's sick. Poor guy. Even though she didn't want to die, she did. And a doctor put her down like a dog. That's my objective explanation of what happened there. I might have some of the details wrong. I'm not a reporter. This isn't a report. This is my Canadian girl's life experience and opinion that, as far as I know, I'm still allowed to have. Anyway, this is my first post for my new direction my channel is about to take. All of the posts that I've got online all over, in every platform there is, including X, which unfortunately I cannot post to anymore because I've got some working out details that I have to do in order to reestablish my relationship that I formed when it was first purchased by Elon Musk and made free again. So I've got to figure out that stuff, and I'm sick, and cognitively I'm not doing well. But I got my feeding tube in. It keeps coming out. But whatever. And, I don't know how much longer I have. But from here forward, it's about my channels, wherever I can have them established, solely about information. I am never to make a nickel. Anybody who does make a nickel off my content, YouTube, Google, Apple, whatever, uses it. You better ask with Dr. Jordan Peterson first, because he's Dr. Jordan Peterson's platform, if he has one, or Elon Musk. And a relationship that I'd like to reestablish with Twitter, or X. EWTN, although I'm not appropriate for their content. And any Canadian organization that might be interested in my content. I'd like for you guys to make money if there's any money to be made. I'm just trying to save the lives of my children and my grandchildren and my great-granddaughter. And I want to give them a better life than what I had. And the only way that's going to happen is to get rid of these globalist people. Trump is working. Believe it or not, what the actions he's taking, I believe, right down to my heart and soul, are to restore the freedom to the American citizens that fought for that freedom 270 years ago, over 200 years ago anyway. Because the same people are behind what's going on now. You can call it Iran. It's not Iran. You can say it's Israel's fault. It's not Israel. It's the people in charge. The people in charge. These people have money to be made, power that they don't want to lose. But Trump is fighting to return the power to the people of the countries that earned it. Your job globally is to use this opportunity, as tough as it's going to be on some of us, Canada especially, and Britain already is enduring it. It's your job as a people to get to your politicians and make them stop it. Get rid of them. Ask them to resign. And elect people who don't get paid to sell the people of their country out to the highest bidder. And get paid to restrict the resources of the country to only the most wealthy partners. Because I believe that's what's happening everywhere. And that's how it's always happened prior to, well, the last 300 years anyway, when the world was, some countries of the world were cajoled into believing that they were actually free. They lost that freedom around about World War II, I'm going to say. Somewhere in there. Definitely after 2007 or 1917, when a wonderful little thing happened in Fatima that actually made the papers of the time, because it was a miracle. And it was a sign of what was going to happen that nobody wanted to pay attention to, or few wanted to pay attention to. But we're coming back into it again. This one world order nonsense. When you hear a politician actually saying those words out loud, remember, that's war. against the people of the country that they live in and they rule over. Just my opinion. Have a great day. It's March the 23rd. I've talked for, an hour. An hour and 1 minute. I hope it's entertaining to somebody or informative to others. It might even get me arrested. I don't care. Do I care? What do I have to care about? I'm trying to save my life. I'm trying to save my children's life. Love you guys. Have a good day.